What's going on, guys? Hey, welcome back to class TCCC Adapted. We are on our second to last step of the March algorithm, the adapted March algorithm, if you will. So if you are new here, make sure you go back and watch MAR. We did M, massive bleeds. We're checking for anything that is massively bleeding because that is the number one cause of death in the battlefield, especially Ukraine, by far amongst anything else, massive bleeds and the problems massive bleeds cause. Okay. A is airway. Make sure they're not choking. Make sure they can breathe, basically. Okay. Again, this is a really dumbed down, simplified version of what I believe infantry, so at least infantry soldiers need to know on the battlefield, because it's going to be simplified, but it is more knowledge. It's understanding more interventions. Um, than what standard TCCC teaches for CLS level, combat lifesaver, which is how most infantry are trained. Or that's the level most infantry are trained to. If you're a combat medic, then you get some of these other interventions that we've been talking about, like the needle decompression device, and something we'll talk about today as well. So M, massive bleed, A, airway, R is respirations, basically making sure if they've got holes in their box, they've got holes in their chest cavity, we're sealing them up with chest seals. If that's not working, we're sticking them with a needle D, boom, to let that air out. Okay. MAR. Now we're on C, circulation. Circulation is a really important part because this is kind of what is considered to be the reassess, reevaluate, and now we need to stabilize this patient step, okay, or casualty step. So circulation, I've got my notes pulled up here, so I'm looking at them. Final summary slide, basically the priorities of circulation of C. Recheck for bleeding. You're going to go through again, check those tourniquets, check those chest seals, check your needle decompression, make sure everything's still on, it's tight, and it's working. Such a common factor of death here in Ukraine is things like tourniquets being applied, and then they have to move this casualty to another building because of a drone threat or artillery, whatever. They have to move this casualty here, there, and these tourniquets will come off during transportation. By the time these soldiers get their casualty to the next location, their casualty's dead because he bled out. And so rechecking. Second part of circulation is identifying shock. Now, in any CLS, in any CMC course that I've taken multiple of both. Shock is this big, confusing, really broad category of symptoms, and it can be intimidating. Basically, what you need to know is that if your casualty loses well, first of all, because this messed with my head for a while, there's being in shock. Like I'm shocked. Like the first time you're in combat, you're shocked, right? There's shell shock, right? Maybe there's artillery really close by. You're rattled, you're stunned, you're shell shocked, right? These are different than what shock is referring to in combat medicine. Shock is a symptom typically of losing a lot of blood. You go into what's called hemorrhagic shock. There's multiple kinds of shock, but in combat medicine, you're primarily worried about hemorrhagic shock. When you lose a bunch of blood, a lot of problems start happening, and shock is this list of problems. Okay, you don't need to know unless you're going to be a combat medic. You don't need to know this really this super in-depth list of symptoms of shock. What you need to know is identifying our casualties lost a lot of blood. We've done M through R, right? Massive bleeds, airway, respirations, and he's still dying. He's getting worse. You can tell he's getting worse. You need to realize at that point, this casualty's in shock. He lost too much blood. He's in shock. And then you also got to realize shock is deadly. If we don't start taking some making some interventions, doing some interventions, he will die. The priorities of this, of C, again, we'll go back through. Recheck for bleeding, identifying shock, treat any hidden hemorrhages Basically going back through, doing another blood sweep, because you always do your blood sweep at the beginning in M for massive bleed. The blood sweep, we didn't cover it very well, which was my mistake, but blood sweep is you're using your hands and literally feeling all over their body, including the junctionals, armpits, groin, neck, using your hands, checking, looking at your hands. Blood? No? Okay, keep going. If there's blood, boom. Okay, you identify where is that bleed. So your blood sweep is just checking the body for blood. So in circulation, we're rechecking, making sure nothing else happened while we were moving this casualty, nothing opened up or something we didn't see during the initial assessment happened. And then basically you're preparing for evacuation, but we're going to save that for the last step, H, in hypothermia and head wounds. Okay, so check for recheck for bleeding, identifying shock. Those are the biggest things in circulation. All right, so this says the casualty may survive the blast, but circulation failure during evacuation is what kills somebody. Okay, so we are working on our casualty. We've gone through M, we've gone through A, we've gone through R, now we're on C. Now we know, let's reassess. Let's go back through and check everything we've done, make sure it's still holding. Check those tourniquets again. I'm gonna bring this up multiple times because this has killed so many people in Ukraine. It's awful because their tourniquets just fail. They slide off, they rip, whatever, when you're transferring this, when you're moving this casualty. So you're rechecking that. You're checking your chest seals. Did they peel off? Did the tape come undone? Whatever, you're checking it. Add more tape, whatever you have to do. Make sure they're secure. Okay, so let's say you checked everything, right? Now, a really, really big part of circulation is checking the pelvis, okay? Now, this is going to sound weird, but the pelvis is one of the most dangerous places to have a wound, with a broken pelvis especially, because a fractured or broken pelvis will bleed. There's a lot of blood vessels and arteries in your groin pelvis area, and if your pelvis breaks, slices some of these arteries, rips some, tears some of these arteries, you can internally bleed up from 2 to 4 liters of blood into your pelvic bowl. Your pelvic bowl is inside of your body. So you can literally bleed out from the inside. This blood can internally bleed into the pelvic bowl. Medics or nobody can see this blood because it's inside of you, and you can die from blood loss. Okay? So it's important to identify if the pelvis has been fractured or broken. And it's really easy to do that because, number one, pelvis fractures are extremely painful. They're going to be bitching and moaning about it the whole time if they're conscious, okay? You can come down on their hips like this, on both sides of their hips, and feel it. Just do it carefully, because if it is broken, the second you touch it, they're gonna freak out. So you come down on it, feel it. If they're unconscious, you can come down on their hips, feel it. You'll know if it's broken, if it feels broken, basically. Use some common knowledge here, okay? I don't want to get super into the weeds with terminology like feel for crepitus and listen for the sound of bone scraping bone. No, because in a combat situation, you're not going to need that. Feel down, feel your own hips, feel his hips. Do they feel the same? Cool. If not, broken. Okay? Simple. Now, if it is broken, you need to start considering there could be internal bleeding, which there's not much you can do about that, unfortunately. But you can stabilize the pelvis at least, so that there's hopefully less damage done, and it can give the casualty some comfort if you're able to stabilize it. And basically, there's something called a pelvic binder, which looks like a big, thick tourniquet that you could put around their waist like a belt, and you crank it in, and there's a pressure point that will go into either side of their groin that can stop the if there's an arterial bleed from there, it can help stop the bleeding there. Sorry. But we're not going to get into that because the odds of you having a pelvic binder in combat aren't very good unless you're a combat medic. So we're going to move on, but it's important to know, hey, his pelvis is broken. He could be bleeding from the inside. Tell somebody, tell your medic, tell the people on the radio, hey, his pelvis is broken. He is still dying, even though, I mean, we can tell it looks like he's still dying, even though we've got the tourniquets on, blah, 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 blah. We think he's still bleeding. We think it's internal. Okay, at this step, what are we doing? When we get to C, circulation, what are we doing? Again, we're rechecking through MAR. Make sure the tourniquet's still on. Make sure their airway is still clear. Make sure their respirations are okay, meaning their chest seals are still applied, airtight. If you inserted a needle decompression, make sure that's still working. Basically, look at it, make sure it's not filled with blood or dirt or something. Okay, all those things are good, but your casualty is still declining. You could tell this person's still in bad shape. Then you know in your head, if everything else is good, this casualty is probably in shock. So what helps shock? Shock it's kind of like the Voldemort word for combat medicine. It's really easy to get into shock. It's really hard to take casualty out of shock. Okay, but pretty much the number one prevention to shock and resource that will help if your casualty is in shock is getting more warm blood into their body. Of course, it has to be a matching type or a universal donor blood into their bloodstream, but you got to get blood into that casualty to help start to reverse the side effects of shock. Otherwise, they will die 100% of the time. Okay, so if they're not getting to evacuated in time. So here's the part that makes this, here's what's adapted to this part of TCCC. In regular TCCC, they expect a casualty, like we've discussed in the other sections, they expect a casualty to already be evacuated and at a qualified medical professional who will now do these steps, will now administer blood, will now pump TXA, for example. TXA is a drug that helps clot blood. The regular TCCC assumes this. It's not the case in Ukraine, and I doubt it will be the case in any other peer-to-peer conflict that has drones involved, because you're not going to get that casualty anywhere anytime soon. This 10 to 30 minute evacuation window is non-existent. We're talking multiple hours at the fastest you can evacuate somebody, multiple days at worst, okay? So with that said, if you can't get this casualty to a qualified medical professional who knows how to do this stuff, you need to at least have an idea of how to do these things as an infantry soldier, as a machine gunner, as a grenadier, as a marksman. You need to know how to do this stuff, or at least also know how to identify these things, because then you can start radioing in, hey, we need blood dropped. We need A positive blood dropped. Here's our location, blah, blah, blah. So what you need to know as an infantry soldier in modern warfare now is how to administer an IV. Yes, the needles into the veins, an IV or an IO. An IO is directly into the bone. It's extremely painful. There's multiple locations you can administer an IO, and I'll put those up on screen here. It's in this format that we're doing these lessons, it's going to be hard for me to show you how to do an IV. I would show you right here how to do an IV on myself if I could, but YouTube will take the video down. And an IO, you can't really, you can YouTube these things though. Look, YouTube how to do an IV. I think there are some channels that do it, or they know how to censor it properly. I don't know how. And there are a few videos out there showing like Marines getting an actual IO, extremely painful. Okay, so you need to know how to do set up an IV and how to set up an IO. You need to know both, because if the casualty has lost a lot of blood, you're not going to be able to find a vein, okay? Because they're dehydrated, the blood loss, their veins shrink into their body. You're not going to be able to find a vein to put a needle into. That's when an IO comes into place. You stick it straight into the bone. It's a group of needles like this, straight into the bone, and you push these fluids straight into like the bone marrow area where there's also blood transfusing or perfusing. Important piece of kit for you to have in your IFAC, which most IFACs do not come with, is a IV starter kit. An IV starter kit is just a little bag like this that has everything a medic needs or you need to start an IV. So let's say it's you that was losing a lot of blood, you're going into shock. A medic or one of your buddies, hopefully who watched one of these videos, shows up and thinks, okay, he's recognizing MAR, those are all good. He's okay on those, but he's still in really bad shape and it looks like he's going to die. I need to give him blood. So he knows this, right? Being able to recognize these things and having at least the idea, the knowledge in your head is more than half the battle, right? Otherwise, if you have no idea, you're just looking at this guy like he's still dying and I have no idea why. It could be anything. No. Ideally, if you're watching some of these videos, you could start to recognize, okay, well, it's not M, it's not A, it's not R. He's got to be in shock. Okay, what do we do when he's in shock? We give him blood. Okay, how do we give him blood? We've got to either get an IV in his veins. Try this first. If not, we got to give him an IO. Okay, so you're going to have to, on your own time, look at how to administer an IV and an IO. Okay, check that out on your own. Now we're going to assume that you have a general knowledge of how to do an IV or an IO. Now you've got to get blood into this casualty. Everybody in Ukraine, for the most part, has their blood indicator, their blood type on their kit, on their helmet, A positive, O negative, whatever it is. There's multiple ways to go about this at this point. I'm willing to say 90% of units in Ukraine, foreigner and Ukrainian, do not carry blood on them, which is fine. Well, hold on. They don't carry blood on them. In TCCC adapted, you would. Now, I do know, and I actually saw this, or I researched it, or I read or something. Some special forces units in the United States military will carry like a leader pack, one of these packs of their own type blood in their assault packs. In case the worst happens, they are starting to go into shock or they're already in shock. The medic gets to them and it's like, oh my God, he's in bad shape. We got to push blood into him now. Boom, right out of his day pack. Yes, there's no really safe way of transporting blood around, but it's one of those situations where it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it, because that means you die. So a few different ways of going about it. You can carry a pack of your own blood in your assault pack when you go on missions. Now that's assuming either you or somebody you know on your team knows how to give that blood to you, okay? Or your combat medic can also carry a couple different types of blood, usually universal donor blood, which is O-neg, I believe, that O-neg can go to everybody. It can be given to A positive, AB positive, A negative, whatever. And now we are seeing, as in the last year and a half, drones are able to sometimes bring blood to the actual casualty and the medic, and now they have warm blood, ideally, that they can use. So if you don't want to carry your own blood, if your medic doesn't want to carry blood, okay, at least have the idea, speak with your drone teams. Hey, let's make sure this is an SOP. Let's make sure before we go on a mission, you have a couple of liters of universal blood or each member's blood or whatever of the team, just in case, so you can fly that blood over to us, okay? All right, so rewind a little bit now. I know it's kind of all over the place, but it'll all come together here. So this is why I keep recapping too, to kind of bring it back. So we're recognizing we've done our steps, and through our they're still dying. We realize now they're in shock. They need blood. Ideally, you know how to give an IV. So you start this IV. Boom. Okay. Now you need to figure out where to get that blood. Does somebody else on the team have the same blood as the casualty? This is something good to know before you go on a mission as well. For example, I knew Alfie, and I had the same blood type. So just in case of emergency, if the drone can't drop us blood, they can't find us or whatever, we can do a blood transfusion from person to person. Okay. So that's just something good to know beforehand. Okay, this guy and this guy, we all share blood, the same blood type. Okay, just in case of emergency, we know that in case we can share. And then if not, if nobody has blood, or nobody has the same blood type, or the person that does have the same blood type is KIA, or the worst happened, yes, you need to get it from your drone team ASAP. And that's something that not just a combat medic needs to know how to radio in. Every soldier should know, hey, Shaka is in shock. He is a red casualty. We need to get him warm blood ASAP. The reason you want warm blood is because warm blood assimilates or it perfuses through the body faster. Your body accepts it faster and will help reverse the signs of shock, the symptoms of shock faster. Now, in standard TCCC, they're still talking about giving patients and casualties plasma. They're still talking about different parts, plasma and saline. This is all super outdated, and TCCC is starting to phase that out from what I've seen in the most part. It's blood 100% of the time. You want to give blood. You don't give this, don't push random fluids into your casualty, just blood, okay? Something else so keeping an IV kit is important, an IV starter kit in your IFAC. Second to that is TXA. Here's a picture of TXA. It just looks like a vial of, any other kind of drug, but it is a drug that helps clot, or helps the clotting process of blood. We've seen, so keeping this in your IFAC, and a medic rolls up on you, or one of your buddies rolls up on you and sees you got TXA in your IFAC, they're going to be able to, in IFAC, you can hit anywhere. So you got your syringe, you're able to pull up, you're able to draw up that TXA, boom, right into, typically you want to put it in whichever limb had the majority of the bleeding, right? So if they lost half of this arm, you're going to stick them with TXA in here. If they lost their right leg, you're going to stick them with this in their right leg. This will dramatically increase their chance of survival. So keeping TXA on you should be an SOP. It is for combat medics. Combat medics have TXA. Every single soldier should have TXA in their bag. So make sure before an operation, before a mission, before deployment, get some TXA from your medic or the medical department or wherever you're at, and get it for it's not a narcotic. It's not like fentanyl. They're going to give you TXA if you need it. So get that, put it in your IFAC. So big takeaways right now, right, from the circulation is identifying that this is reassessing, making sure everything that you've done in the prior steps of March is okay. Okay, now you are trying to figure out if this casualty is in shock or not. Do they look like that they're stabilizing? Okay, they're probably not in shock. Are they getting worse? They are in shock. Okay, now you know they're in shock. What do we do when somebody's in shock? We give them blood. How do we give them blood? An IV or an IO. IV is going to be the easiest. IO, you probably want to wait for a medic, but it's still good to know, man. Countless lives could be saved if infantry soldiers were taught this at a baseline level, just how to set up an IV. Because then over the radio, somebody can give you some telemedicine guidelines. Hey, here's what you're going to want to do. Do you have the IV in? Yes. Okay. Now here's how you're going to set up the line. Here's what you're going to do with the blood bag. They can help with that stuff, but you got the hardest part out of the way, which was getting the needle in there and getting them ready for the blood. So we reassessed, we checked for shock. Yes, they're in shock. Now we need to give them blood. We set up the IV, and we were able to get blood either from one of the other team members, or a drone was able to drop some blood. Now we're pumping blood into them. Okay, we have more for all intents and purposes, we've completed the most life-threatening portion of C, of circulation. Getting blood into that casualty is top priority. Okay. This is definitely well, I would say probably the most difficult part of the CMC class, of any CMC class, because you're learning what shock is, and they get really deep into shock, and you got to check their blood pressure, and what is their blood pressure? If it's this, if their systolic is this, and their diastolic is this, the top and bottom numbers are this, then it's this kind of shock. All of that, in my opinion, does not need to be known unless you're a combat medic. What needs to be known is saying he's still dying and he's not actively bleeding. Okay, it could be in his pelvis possibly, or he just already lost too much blood before we were able to stop it. Either way, he's going to need more blood. So that, recognizing that, and being able to get some TXA in this guy ASAP. TXA is it's kind of like the magic combat medicine in a way. There's not thousands of studies done on it, but there are genuine hard data statistics that show how good it works for casualties with severe trauma and massive blood loss. So let's go through it one more time and then we'll end it, okay? We just hit our circulation step. Boom. We are now at C. Now we go back. We check our tourniquets. We check our chest seals. We check the airway. MAR. We check all those. Okay, everything's good. The casualty is still not looking good and they're getting worse. We recognize they're probably in shock. We recognize if they're in shock, they need blood. Now, because we trained it, because we learned it, we practiced it, we're going to set up an IV. Okay, you get that IV in them, and now we're getting blood. Blood's already on the way, hopefully from the drone, or you've already got blood from your medic, whatever. Now you're getting blood into this casualty. Okay, that's what you need to know. 100% need to know as an infantry soldier in peer-to-peer combat. The rest of that, adding calcium, 1 milligram calcium to the blood, adding how much blood do you add per hour, blah, blah, blah. You can learn all that over the radio or through more intense courses later on, okay? If you want. But what's going to save their life is getting that TXA in them and getting some blood in them as soon as possible if they're going into shock. That was a lot, guys. I hope you stuck with me there. I hope that wasn't too confusing. Like I said, this is the part that rattles my brain every time I take a CMC course, no matter how many times it's taught. It's taught different a little bit by everyone, and it's always complicated as hell. It doesn't have to be that complicated. Hopefully this was at least a little bit more simple than the really in-depth by the book portion of March, C portion of March. All right, guys. Listen, I love you. Go back and watch the other videos. Please like, share, and subscribe to this one. Or please like and share on this one. We want to get these videos to the people that need to see them. We'll see you in the next video.